Hey, my name is Dario Lirio, and I'm a drone pilot based out of the Grand Rapids area. I'm with Latari Studios.
What got you interested in drones, I guess? First of all, what's your kind of background with photography and everything?
Okay, so what got me interested in the photography, videography, drones? It was in high school. I was thinking about a summer job, and a lot of my friends were getting jobs at grocery stores, ice cream shops, and I wasn't super excited about that. And I heard there was an opportunity for a student to make a film, and there was a grant set aside for that. Sounded like the perfect job, and I took that up, and I got a GoPro, and I started shooting around, got some footage. But someone else stopped by one of our shoot days and had a drone. And that drone fascinated me. That was the one takeaway I had from that summer is I had to get my hands on a drone, but drones were expensive. And so I kept working and saving up some money so I could purchase my first drone, which is a Phantom 4 Standard. It's the white one before the Mavic models. It was a bit heftier and it was difficult to carry around, but I flew that so much.
And what was this? So you got a grant. Was this through school?
Yeah.
Was this through school? Was it through...
Yeah, so the grant that I was working with was through a club sport. I was in crew rowing, and the crew house, the boat house, had a grant for a student to produce a video, and I was lucky enough to be that student. And then in college, my freshman year, I met with the marketing guys, and they had an opportunity for a student to be a vlogger. And it was great, that process, just continuing making videos. Eventually, past that, I got into making promo videos, and then I upgraded from the Phantom drone to the Mavic 2. And yeah, I think early on in college, Andy and I had connected just through a Facebook message and got a pretty good feel for the other person. That Andy, you were launching a drone business. I was a pilot in Grand Rapids, and we connected there.
What were some of the things early on that you used the drone for at Calvin, or some of the early videos that you produced? Can you remember any? What was the first video that you made with your drone early on, either in high school or college? You remember the first video?
Yeah. So I was super nervous with the drone. I got the drone, and I was into longboarding at the time. I would longboard all over the place. And so I was trying to work with some automated features that I could longboard down the street and have the drone follow me. But I was super scared. So I had the remote in my hand and was trying to fly it in one hand, longboard in the other hand. And that was the first video that I made with the drone. From there, I went into promo videos. So just small businesses, nonprofits around the Grand Rapids area, I would cold call, reach out to them, or I would have a previous connection and meet with whoever owned the business and see if we could put something together.
Do these promo videos do they always incorporate drone usage, or is it a lot of stuff just done with the handheld cameras and the sliders, or is it always drone footage?
That's a great question. I would inevitably find a way to use the drone in every promo video that I worked on.
So you started off flying drones for us. So we found, I think you're right. We met on Facebook together. We started flying drones, and that kind of relationship expanded. So we want to talk about kind of the next steps. You then got involved in helping us produce videos. And today, do you want to talk about kind of what Latari Studios is doing as far as leading kind of the video production for us for all the construction videos? You guys have a small team doing this for us now.
Right. So part of me has always been interested in starting my own business. Later on in college, I was a junior. I took a semester off and really focused on putting time into launching an editing studio. And, I immediately thought of Andy, Drone Bros. That would be a great connection there. And we started on about 30 to 40 videos I would edit a month. And then from there, it expanded exponentially. So now we're at a place where we're editing, well over 100 videos a month, and we're seeing videos from all across the country.
Let's talk about kind of how you use drones, because I see a couple different ways of drones being used, from the utilitarian thing of just going out and flying a job site and capturing stuff, which doesn't take a whole lot of, not that it doesn't take a whole lot of talent, but there's not a whole lot of artistic talent to that. So talk to me about like how because you're kind of you got an artistic side to you and a creative side to you, of how you use drones, how you see drones being like a big deal in the creative world.
Right. So yeah, on one hand, drones are, I believe, the most efficient tool to have on a film set, or when you're just shooting at a construction site, even because of how efficient they are. You can bring the drone to a site, and within 5 minutes, you can capture quite a good variety of shots. You can get some close-ups with it, focusing in on some of the work, and then you can get some wide angles too. But beyond the drone, it doesn't cover everything from an artistic standpoint. So I work a lot with stories or promo videos, and at that point, a drone becomes one of many tools that you have in your arsenal to work on a story.
What was your favorite shoot what's the most memorable shoot that you ever did with a drone? Is there anything that was the most memorable, as far as, again, challenging, fun? What was the most memorable experience that you've used a drone for?
It was my very first more professional level shoot. I was in high school, and this was the Phantom 4 drone. And so we were on the side of a highway. The director was there and a couple crew members, and so we were setting up this drone shot, tracking a semi truck driving down the road. It was at dusk. It's a bit questionable whether I should have been flying then in the first place. But there was a bunch of older people there telling me how I should get the shot, and I was a little bit worried about the telephone wires, and I mentioned that. But it was like, no, it's okay. So the semi truck's driving, got the drone up really quick. It was going back. It was Phantom 4 travels at 45 miles an hour. So I was flying 45 miles an hour backwards and focused on the camera angle. And that's when, of course, I hit the telephone wire. So yeah, that memory stands out vividly to me, because it was one of my first experiences working professionally. And also it taught me the lesson, how valuable saying no is, because I knew that I shouldn't be flying. There were a couple of different factors, dangers around the area that I was looking around at, but I didn't feel like I was in a position to call it off. So I think as a drone pilot, that's extremely important to know, whether it's weather, or it's either construction equipment around you, or someone that's bothering you while you're flying it. It's important to be able to say no and to fly at a safer time.
Because oftentimes you're flying, you've got someone literally standing over your shoulder, kind of looking at what you're capturing. Again, whether it's a superintendent on a job site or a director, they're kind of standing over your shoulder, kind of telling you what shots that they think they want to get or to do. So
my friends and I took a trip together out to Banff, which is National Park in Canada. We all hopped in a van and drove the 31 hours from Grand Rapids over there. And I was so excited to fly my drone. And I brought this big hunk of technology in my backpack all the way up. It was like a 10, 12 mile hike, and got to the top. And luckily we were at an elevation that wasn't too crazy and launched the drone. And it was just beautiful for me to see it from that angle and to capture from an angle that I would not otherwise be able to see from. And I'm trying to think, I think why I really valued that time flying with a drone was because of the hard work bringing that piece of technology up to the top of the mountain, and then taking it off and everything coming together and capturing the beautiful photos that I had envisioned in my mind, and it delivered. So I've worked with a few nonprofits over the years that have brought me internationally. The first time was an internship out in Thailand. So I was in Chiang Mai, and I was teaching locals how to use Adobe Premiere and Lightroom. And so I would have a translator next to me. I would say something in English and they would translate to Thai to get the message across. And we brought equipment to local villages. The idea being, if we could teach them how to produce media, they could then spread the word with others through their media production. Another place that I went was more of the Middle East. So I went to Israel, Jordan, and Egypt. And so I had the drone there as well. That was a pretty crazy experience, just crossing the border with the drone and the types of shots that I was able to obtain there. I'd say my favorite being on the Nile River. We were on one of the cruise ships, just traveling up and then launching the drone from the cruise ship and following and looking at all of the farmland around. It was beautiful.
What would be your top 3 tips for someone new in the space of trying to get really good footage with a drone?
Right. Okay. So my first tip would be to, before you launch the drone, before you take off, look at your display and make sure that you have the right photo setting selected and the right video setting selected, whatever that is. Maybe it's, capturing at 60 frames per second, or maybe it's capturing at 4K at 30 frames per second. But before I take off, I make sure that those settings are locked in. That way I don't have to worry about that during my flight, or, worst case scenario, I fly the entire site, look down, oops, I captured it in the incorrect setting. That would be my first tip. Second tip being, the way that I approach flying a construction site is capturing a good amount of wide angles, a good amount of medium angles, and then a good amount of close shots. So those wide shots show the entire site. Usually I like to pull out for a reveal or push in for an intro. And then the medium shots are more going around the sides of the site, showing it from all angles. And the close-up shots, it's also very important to focus on the activity actually happening on site. And that can't always be captured when your drone is 400 feet in the air. It often has to be you maybe walking a little bit closer so you can get a better view to make sure you're not going to hit anything, and then really pushing the drone closer to the action. That way the video is more useful, and I think it's a more exciting product in the end.
Okay.
And my third tip is more geared towards someone getting a drone for the very first time. This is something that I followed and have recommended to anyone else interested in a drone as well. That being, don't go out and spend $1,000, $2,000 on your first drone. Get one of the cheap kits from Target, from Meijer, what have you, and then learn on that drone, crash that drone. It's okay. That it doesn't have geo-positioning like the DJI drones have, and that actually teaches you how to keep your eye on the drone. So I think that is a great initial purchase before you buy a professional quality drone.
Got it. So
Yep.
back to camera settings. So I know there's an unlimited amount of settings on the camera, again, from 720 all the way up to 4K, the ISO, there's an unlimited combination of settings. So I know for doing theatrical or cinematography, if you're hired by a production company, again, depends on whether you're inside, you're outside, the time of day, and then settings could be limitless. Right. Is there some advice you can give to pilots for construction in particular that would be kind of the go-to settings for a typical construction site? Do we want to be screwing off white balance? Do we want it set on auto? What are your thoughts or your opinions on basic camera settings for a construction site? Is there such a thing as basic camera settings for a construction site?
Right. I do think that there's such a thing as basic settings at a camera site. And what I follow, at least, is You want to have it on 60 frames per second because that gives you silky smooth footage. And then from there, you set the quality as high as it can go. So my drone, the Mavic 2 right now, it can film 60 frames per second at 2K. And so that's what I recorded. Now, when it comes to, the coloring, the exposure, you're talking about shutter speed, aperture, ISO, those for construction sites, I tend to leave in auto unless there's an issue. So I'll put it in auto and then I'll make sure that it looks appealing to the eye. And if something is problematic, then I'll go back and change it. But the drones, the camera sensors, for the most part, they do a pretty good job of telling and understanding the lighting situation that you're in and adapting to that.
Let's jump to the editing side. So as you're seeing obviously footage coming into your company every day. You're doing hundreds of videos a month now all across the country. So you're getting kind of exposure to hundreds of different pilots that are sending stuff to you. What's the again the best advice you would give, or what are you seeing that you'd like to see more of, and what you like to see less of as far as pilots? What can pilots be doing more of or a better job with as far as the footage that they're sending to you? What's missing?
Yeah. So short clips is an issue. When a pilot films 5 to 10 second clips, that's not enough space to put an edit, to put a shot together. So I would say really honing in on that 20 to 25 seconds for a length, that's important. Another very important aspect for editing is because editors aren't out on the site. They get the footage and they're editing it on the computer. And so filming in a way that also explains the site to post-production. By that, I mean not randomly flying your drone around to whatever looks interesting, but launch the drone, fly in a rectangle around the site so that you get a good view of the entire site. And then after that, going through and doing your close-ups, maybe do a diagonal across as well. And that way there's a format in which you're filming that can easily be picked up on and understood by an editor. Each shot that a pilot takes represents an idea. So that idea could be going close to activity on the construction site. The idea could be revealing the entire site in a wide shot. Maybe the idea is flying in a line with the camera point at the site down the lower half of the site. But if you film for 10 to 15 minutes and then it's one clip, it's extremely difficult to go through the clip and try to parse out the ideas and then reassemble that into there's a communication between the drone pilot and the editor. There's no words said, but the communication is done through the clips that are provided.
Well, let's talk about your opinion, or what would you recommend? You've got people flying Mavic Airs. We got people flying $399 Mavic Airs from Costco. We got people flying Phantoms. We got people flying Mavic 2 Pros. We got people flying Inspires with cameras on them. What would be? Is there a standard setting that you would kind of recommend across the board? That is, should it be 2K? Should it be 4K? Should it be 60 frames a second? What's the standard settings as far as basic camera settings that you would recommend flying these construction sites at?
Yeah. I'd recommend shooting at 60 frames per second in the highest quality available to you. So it'll differ per drone. Some it will be HD, so 1080. Mavic 2, I know, can do 60 frames at 2K. And then some drones now can do 60 frames per second at 4K. Now, if you can shoot that, please do.
Does that possess a problem as far as the size of the footage now, uploading the footage and working the footage? That doesn't matter. You don't get concerned about that.
Well, no, that's not a concern. I mean, you got to understand, if you're filming in 4K, the file size is going to be much larger than if you're filming in 1080. But as far as our workflow goes, as editing, that's not going to slow us down very much.
So frames per second is the number one number one thing.
Yep.
Highest, so if your drone can go up to 60 frames a second, by default, do that. And if it's only 60 frames a second at 1080, pick that. Or if it's 60 frames a second at 2.7, pick that. Or if it's 60 frames a second at 4K, pick that.
Yep, spot on. It's the 60 frames per second. That frame rate is what's important. And then whatever quality of video that you can film at, or whatever resolution you can film at, that's the 60 frames dictates that.
So back to the thought of how you're seeing drones kind of benefiting the construction world from a pilot and from dealing with these superintendents, and
right.
What are you seeing as kind of the prime benefits for drones on the construction sites?
So one benefit is from a data point. A supervisor, often it's hard, they're in a truck and they can't get around the site all the time. And so it's good to have a video that they can review to fully grasp the entirety of their site. It's important to be able to check, where piles are, who's working on what. I think those are important uses of the drone. But I would say more importantly, it has to do with the funding and the project background. So there are stakeholders in each of these construction projects, owners, meetings, all that. And the construction crew has to provide those owners with, a good sampling of where they're at with the job. Are they meeting the deadlines? And I think drone videos are extremely important for that, because it's oftentimes a meeting. They're meeting in whatever trailer and they're talking about it. Maybe they do a drive-by, but the drone video gives it a better perspective and a more comprehensible perspective on the progress level of each project.
Got it. So the more data, I'm hearing you correctly, the more data, the better. I mean, we run into general contractors that they think the answer to a drones is, we'll send a drone up, we'll get pictures from four corners, and they have 4 photos to look at their upcoming meeting. And that's really not enough these days compared to having a video to look at, having a map that you can zoom in on, there's a lot more to this than just grabbing 4 pictures from 4 corners of the job site.
Yeah, absolutely. The video is, I would assume that the most useful portion of this is the map, because of how much you can zoom into each photo and draw the data from the map. Oftentimes it's not just, the pixels that you're working with, but you can actually take measurements from these maps as well. So that's important. But I do really enjoy the video because it gives, Andy, I don't know how to say this, but it gives a story to the project. It allows, the viewer, the stakeholders to fully grasp what's going on.
You can stop. You can stop the video. You can a photo. You got one photo. You can see what it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't tell the full story. You can't stop. You can't.
Right.
You get more information out of a video than you do out of a photo. And you're right. You get more information out of a map than you do out of the video. So each level that you take, from taking a simple photo to producing a video to doing a map, there are different levels of depth that you can get into the data around the site.
Yep. And at that point, it's just deciding at the level of depth that you want to go to each, and understanding the benefits that each has.
Yeah. So so answering Robbie, so outside of work, you got the drone, you like to go, is nature
It's nature. Nature is the call, Andy.
Yeah.
I love bringing that drone hiking. It's really trails, mountains, anything. I'll want to be taking a picture there too. Half the sites that I have flown at in the past when I started this, I can't fly at anymore. So national parks, no. Often state parks now, nope. Beaches, they'll have signs you don't want to fly in the beaches. Even parks, just where kids play at, sometimes they'll throw up signs too. I know we have a county here called Ottawa County on the west side of Michigan, and they just passed something that banned drones from any county property outright, unless you get explicit permission from someone. Right. I think there's been a few bad lemons in the pilots, and they've cause issues. So, when the
Sure.
person landed a drone or crashed their drone into one of the hot springs, that was an issue. And those are the things that make news. And so once that news story pops up, it's cycled around, and then it starts to create a narrative around drones. And then when people fly drones, you often know about it because it makes a noise. And so it's very easy to attach, bad memories, a narrative that you heard to a drone. And I think things have progressed in that way. It's also just a privacy concern. There does need to be regulation surrounding it, but then there also needs to be a path that professionals can take to navigate through the regulation and do the work that we need to do. And so I feel that the FAA, with the release of the automated LANS program, that was a massive step in the right direction. And I hope to continue seeing more automated processes that we can put in our proper credentials and unlock zones. Where it's tricky right now still is at the local level of authority. When you're on site, when you're in a city and there's police nearby, often the police don't know. Like they don't have training on how to interact with drones, not yet at least. And so I find it good practice, if I see some sort of authority figure around an area before I take off, I just say hi. Tell them what I'm going to do, ask them if they'll have a problem with that. Oftentimes the answer is, I'm not going to tell you no.
Yeah.
And so that's my code for, go ahead. It's fine.